It just isn't the holidays without a nice holiday punch. Did you know St. Nicholas is purported to have punched a man at the Council of Nicaea? Yes, at a church council, Santa Claus started a fist fight. So first off, before I go anywhere with this, I think it's important people understand what hagiography is. Hagiography is a genre of literature generally concerning the saints and their deeds, and isn't best understood in a literal historical fashion. It's more focused on conceptual truths to give you an idea about the person, and their transformation teaches us something about the God that they believe themselves to worship. That being said, hagiographies are some of the most colorful literature you'll come across. In 325, Constantine called for the Council of Nicaea to better unify his empire and to unify the church itself. The idea was that they would hammer out the key things that were believed universally by the Christians. He called upon all the religious leaders within the empire to come and sit down and to work out what Christian orthodoxy would be. What are the things we all kind of agree on? Probably the most controversial topic that came out of this meeting was the Arian controversy. Now, contrary to what someone like Dan Brown would say in the Da Vinci Code, this wasn't a debate as to whether or not Christ was divine, but rather, how God is he? He believed that since Christ was born, Christ by default is a created being, and therefore could not be co-eternal with the Father. Arius believed Jesus to be as close to God as you could be without being God. It wasn't unheard of for God to be created in a polytheistic culture such as the Romans. And the idea of gods begetting gods isn't a foreign concept, let alone strange. But it was strange for those coming from a Jewish culture, where their monotheism is what set them apart, and their concept of God in eternity being very different. The majority of the Christians at the time understood this just to be a strange paradoxical thing that was the case. So the way the story goes in the hagiography is at the debate, Arius keeps yammering on, and eventually the Bishop of Myra, Nicholas the Wonder Worker of Myra, can't handle it. He gets so frustrated, and apparently he walks up to him and strikes him right in front of everyone. There's some issues with translation and sources. The oldest sources we have are less than a millennia old, and so they're not really contemporary sources. Some say that the translation is more correctly said to be a slap, and some of the older hagiographies we have don't even have it being Arius, but rather just a random Arian. But regardless, St. Nicholas struck a man in a church council in front of the emperor. And the way the story goes is Arius is surprised, looks at Constantine like, "Are you going to allow this?" And Constantine's all like, no, it's not cool. You can't be punching people in church councils, dude. You're out. Constantine calls to his guards, and he's like, strip this man of his bishop deely and throw him in jail. Can't be starting a fight at a church council. That's frowned upon. This is apparently St. Nicholas is sitting in jail. Super sad, super depressed, embarrassed, repentant. He's like, he knows that even if Arius was a heretic, he probably should not have punched him in the face. Because that isn't the Christian way. The Christian way at that time is still pretty pacifist. And so while he's repenting in jail, apparently Jesus shows up, and he's like, "Hey, why are you in jail?" And St. Nicholas is all embarrassed. And he's like, "'Cause I love you so much." And he forgives him. And then Mary shows up, and she gives him a sweet new sash. And by that I mean one of those sweet bishop dealies that they wear over their shoulders. Yeah. And then Jesus is like, plus here's a copy of the gospel, because people in prison love having things to read. And this becomes a continuing motif in iconography. If you look at old pictures of St. Nicholas in icons and stuff, you'll notice Jesus on one side handing him a book, and Mary on the other side giving him new bishop vestments. Then St. Nicholas is happy again, just sitting in his jail cell, dressed as the bishop, reading the Bible. And then the guards walk by and they're like, "Where'd you get all this stuff?" Because they recall taking his bishop dealies earlier, and these ones are pretty fanciful and nice, and they're suspicious. Plus he has a book, and there's no reading aloud. And he's all like, "Jesus and Mary gave them to me," and they don't find this strange at all. They're like, "Cool. Good on you." So they go and tell Constantine. It's like, "Hey, Constantine, that bishop who started the fist fight, yeah, he got new bishop dealies and a book. He said Jesus and Mary gave them to him." And Constantine's all like, "I can't kick him out if Jesus says he's in. He's in charge of this thing." So he reappoints him as a bishop. Now, this story has come back into popularity in the last several years. It's both fun and kind of sad that now this is what we remember St. Nicholas for sometimes. That of all his ridiculous hagiography stories, whether it's children in barrels or saving a man from being executed, it's sad that we don't focus on his life being about showing care towards children and prisoners and women who are in horrible situations. But rather we remember that time he punched a man in the face and completely omit the fact that even within the story, that was not the right thing to do. Instead, it's now a story about silencing someone who's your political opponent. Well, it's a fun story. It's important to think, is this really what we want to focus on? Let's think about that over a drink. Did you know punch comes from a Sanskrit word meaning 5? It originally referred to the 5 ingredients used: alcohol, sugar, fruit, water, and spices. When you make your own punch though, make sure you don't overheat it, as since alcohol has a lower boiling temperature than water, heating up your punch too much will cause you to boil off the alcohol.